Wayne Scott here for ITProPortal.com. Today I'm talking to Andrew Good, who's Chief Operating Officer of Sunblock. Firstly, welcome to ITProPortal.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about Sunblock then, the background of the company and what you're focused on doing.
Okay. Project Sunblock was founded in Canada back in 2007. And it's a company that came over to the UK in 2010 and where we've recentered the headquarters. Project Sunblock itself is a content verification tool. And what that means is we're in the business of helping advertisers and brands ensure that they're positioning their advertising against the content which is appropriate for their brand. In the worst cases, allowing them to avoid appearing next to content that might be illegal or just wholly inappropriate for advertising.
What's the scale of the problem that you find with brands out there that are involved with online advertising? How many of them are finding their adverts in the wrong place or simply don't know?
Well, I think it's a question that actually, on a broad sense, affects everybody that's advertising online. The scale of the issue really is, let's take a look at the numbers that were in 2000 and delivered in 2000. There's 778 billion ads served in 2011, according to the IAB. Now, with the research that we conducted at the end of last year, we found that approximately 1% of those were going into inappropriate placements. That means there's 7.8 billion ads a year being served into what's classed as inappropriate. And by that, I don't mean the grey areas. I mean things that do pornography, illegal downloading of movies. And so on that scale, it really does reach into every advertiser that is looking to spend money online.
Tell us about the damage that this can do to brands. I mean, obviously there's the financial implication of the fact that they've got adverts running in places they don't want them to be running and they're paying for them. But what about the reputational aspects of that?
Well, look, clearly there's a huge potential reputational damage that can be caused by misplacement ads. You only have to look at what happened with Ask FM last year when there was a story around the suicide of a young girl and ads appearing next to that content. Recently there was an issue with Tumblr. Looking at another tragic case there where there are brands advertising around the sort of content encouraging suicide. And then further to that, Facebook themselves got into trouble last year with some misogynistic content and various brands advertising there. Clearly those are the high profile ones. Those are the ones that newspapers and so on pick up on. And they cause huge amount of reputational damage, and the evidence of that is the fact that those brands found themselves having to publicly pull their advertising, issue statements against it. Now, on the less public side of the business, there are ads that will appear against sites. Now, if you as a user happen to be, and I don't know what you do in your spare time, but if you happen to be borrowing a film off the internet where you shouldn't be, and you notice an advert for a brand that you'll spend your money with, the association you might make with that brand is that they're supporting that type of content which is known to be illegal or inappropriate. So it reaches into the actual user end as well as the public-facing side of things. The other side of it is when you're looking at sites that are illegal, and there are plenty which are set up to provide illegal downloads of the latest movies, music and so on. Quite often, and this is where we do a lot of work with the City of London Police, these sites are funded by the advertising who's placed on them. That money that's generated from that is then going into organised crime and other more dark areas of society. And clearly that has a wider reaching impact than just what the board members have to be told by these brands when they meet.
Do you think the advertising industry has taken this problem seriously enough?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The industry's had various trade bodies set up going back to 2007 when IASH, the Internet Advertising Sales House, was set up to tackle exactly this sort of problem. And subsequently that's evolved into the Digital Trading Standards Group. And that's encompassing all areas of the industry from buying through to all the selling channels to tackle exactly this sort of problem, to make sure that advertisers are getting what they're paying for and not being positioned against content which is illegal or damaging. Also included now are the City of London Police, and they set up the Police Intellectual Property Crimes Unit, or PIPCU as a more snappy name. And they're now looking under a government remit to try and deter and disrupt advertising and the funding of illegality online. So those two strands together mean that people are very conscious of not contravening the law and what the industry bodies have set out to achieve.
Do you think the online advertising industry as it sits now is transparent enough about how it serves advertising for its customers?
In a nutshell, no. The way the advertising industry has developed and evolved has seen a much greater focus on the use of programmatic buying and using real-time exchanges in order to bid on and buy inventory at various different price points. What that's meant is there's been an increase in blind buying again, and this is something that fell out of fashion, I suppose, as misplacements happened. But the ability to be able to choose the price points at which you buy on, where there's increasingly aggressive acquisition targets for advertisers to achieve, means that people are buying from programmatic channels in order to achieve certain key performance indicators. Now, within the real-time bidding environment, there is a whole host of inventory which is set up as being blind. And essentially you're buying at a price point, you're buying to either reach a certain audience or to retarget people that have already shown an interest. Now, by doing those things, it actually then makes it irrelevant the sites that you appear on. If I'm looking to find you as a potential customer because of what you've done before, actually the site you pop up on doesn't really matter so much. So as people are buying an audience, the sites kind of get pushed to the side a little bit. And that means that as sites get put up into the exchanges to be made available for advertising, then it's a lot easier for sites that may contain content that isn't appropriate to also take a slice of that pie as well. And therefore you've got an increased chance of appearing where you don't want to.
Do you think part of the problem has been that technology and the industry as a whole has grown quicker than advertisers and the agencies can keep up with in order to put in legislation in place to make sure this doesn't happen?
Well, we're certainly in a technology arms race. There's a desire for people to always make sure they've got the latest piece of targeting optimization technology. And inevitably, as that need to be more and more competitive continues, then it's going to be harder and harder for people to keep up with it. The technologies being used are increasingly more specialised as well. So long gone are the days where you and I would be able to sit down and say, can I buy a piece of your imagery? Yes, you can. And that would be it. Now there are so many different layers with, as I said, with retargeting, optimization, ensuring that every single benefit is wrung out of the advertising pennies that are spent. It makes it far more difficult for people to keep on top of it, of what's happening within the industry. And increasingly as well, it makes it more difficult for the trade bodies, for the regulatory bodies, also to stay ahead of the game. Everybody is trying to race at a breakneck speed, and as such, yes, it makes it a lot more difficult to keep up.
What advice would you give to businesses looking to advertise online to make sure that this doesn't happen to them?
Well, I think first of all, it's important to say this isn't about scaring people and saying that the internet's a big bad place and you shouldn't advertise. The benefits of advertising online clearly outweigh the negatives, and it's a fantastic place to get return on investment. However, when people are looking to advertise and broaden their reach, really need to be looking at the environments and trying to control the environments within which you're going to be placing your brand. I think where people get attracted by a price point, it makes it very difficult. It makes people blind to where they're actually going to turn up. And so weighing up the financials against where you're actually appearing kind of becomes a losing battle in certain cases. But if you can try and control your environment, and that means you either buy directly with publishers where you can say, I know where I'm going to be, then that's clearly going to be the best way to control it. If you can't do that, then there are tools like ourselves, like Project Sunblock, which will enable you, give you transparency over where you're appearing. So you'll be able to either actively block when you appear next to certain content. Or worse, you'll be able to review against it and then say, look, I've appeared in these certain places, therefore I want to remove that from my plan. That's really the key way that you're going to be able to control it in this market.
How